Alright, welcome back to another episode of the 850 build. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit different style video. First half of the video is going to be more of a kind of overview of the Whiteblock crankcase ventilation and what to do for under 400 horsepower, over 400 horsepower, and the different variants that came on the 850 and the S60Rs, etc. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so before we get into any Volvo specifics on crankcase ventilation, I think it's a good idea that we go over the general system and how it works. In this case, a positive crankcase ventilation system. So we have an engine block down here. We can see we have a vent coming off the crankcase, and we can see we also have some vents coming off the head. The heads have some vents because obviously there's oil galleys that return the oil down to the oil pan. So these come into usually some sort of oil-air separator, and this oil-air separator usually drains back to the engine. In this case, it drains back through the feed here, back into the crankcase, and usually they have some sort of coolant manifold to help remove any condensation from the gases coming out of the engine. Another option is also sometimes to vent to atmosphere, and instead of recirculating into the intake, you just simply vent those gases to atmosphere. So before moving on, I just want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages of vent to atmosphere versus recirculation. So with recirculation, you get a lot of oil in your intake as a disadvantage, and also it can cause detonation from burning that oil. The advantage would be you're pulling vacuum on the crankcase, which has a whole bunch of advantages other than itself. And the advantage for vent to atmosphere is you're not getting a bunch of oil in your intake tract, and the disadvantage would be you're not pulling vacuum on the crankcase. So I just wanted to make a quick point of those before we moved on. Let's take a look at the overview of the Volvo 850 crankcase ventilation. So we can see here at point number 5 we have the Volvo PCV Box, the positive crankcase ventilation box, and all this is the oil-air separator. And you can see we have an inlet from the actual crankcase, and we have an inlet from the cylinder head. And both these go into this box, and this box is supposed to separate the oil from the air. And then here you can see the air is recirculated back into the intake where it's recombusted and whatnot. And this is fine for a stock setup and whatnot, but there are better options. And we can also see that at point number 4, any oil is returned back to the engine block. Now, one interesting point to make is the oil, basically this vent right here, or this return right here, is actually under the oil level. So this oil is being returned to a drain that is under the oil level. This is to stop any gases from coming back the other way. So it's basically a one-way valve. But as we'll talk about later, this can cause some issues later down the line when you start pushing some serious power and consequently some, higher crankcase pressures. So the RNC prepped blocks have a completely new ventilation system. It has a much bigger outlet from the crankcase, both on the outside and on the inside, much larger. And it also has a much larger oil-air separator box with obviously the attachment for the larger outlet on the block. This newer block has a lot better baffling on the inside and has multiple chambers, and is always recommended to basically switch this RNC prepped PCV box, which always works the best. If you're wondering, you can use the RNC prepped PCV box on an 850. You just have to move the cam cover vent, as you can see here, because the 850 manifold will hit if you use this box because it is extended out quite a bit more from the engine block. So you can make this work, and it's always recommended to use this box. So here are my recommendations for what to do under 400 brake horsepower. I think you should always switch to the RNC Prep PCV box, Volvo part number 8692211. This box just has way better baffling, and it's way bigger, and it just separates the oil and air a lot better. You should always enlarge the outlet of the box to 5/8 or 3/4 inch or something between that. And you should also replace the PTC on the inlet pipe with a barb for whatever hose you choose. And then you should add a really high quality catch can between the PCV box outlet and the inlet pipe. This will help keep a lot of oil out of your intake system. Something like a Radium, or there's a couple other really good brands. I think Nuke makes a really good oil-air separator. And this retains vacuum on the crankcase which is perfect for under 400 horsepower. So over 400 horsepower, my recommendation is basically going to be what I'm doing in the rest of this video. So of course, like I said earlier, switch to the RNC box. We're going to enlarge the outlet of the box to 1 inch, and we're going to run a 1-inch line to the catch can. We're also going to have an additional vent off the back of the block where the stock turbo drain used to be. I tapped that out for 1/2 MPT, and I put a 10 AN fitting back there. And also, what a lot of other people recommend is cutting the drain to under oil. So the stock PCV box drains under the oil, like I said earlier, so you can cut that drain in the oil pan. I haven't personally done this yet, but I may do this in the future. And this setup works really well for over 400 horsepower. I've been using a 1-inch line, but off the old N PCV box, and it works pretty well. And it's going to work even better now with the RNC prep box. Alright, before we get back to working on the car, I just want to go over this quick slide of do not do these things. Do not add additional cam cover vents. I see this a lot, and I tried this myself, and it just barfs oil out the cam cover. The reason why it does this is because the cam cover hose on the OEM setup, it's really just an equalizing hose. All it does is equalize pressure between the head and the block. When you add additional cam cover vents, what it does is you have more breathing in the head than the block, so the block actually breathes through the head, and this brings up all kinds of oil and oil mist, and all that oil gets stuck in the head and it can't drain back. You'll have issues with like losing oil pressure flicker. So do not add cam cover vents. Always do your venting from the block. That cam cover hose is just a hose to equalize the head and the block. Next, don't use the 850N box. It just doesn't have as good baffling and it'll push a lot of oil. Always use the RNC prepped box that I talked about in the previous slides. Also, don't leave the drain under oil for vent to atmosphere setups. In very, very extreme conditions, this can push oil up into the PCV box and back up into your catch can. I haven't personally confirmed if this is happening to me or not yet, so I do not have my drain cut, but if I do have issues, I will go back and cut it.
PCV box looks like. You can see, oh man, that's no good. So, I guess some of the crankcase gases were escaping through here and kind of dripping down a little bit, and I had a little bit of an oil drip. So, we're gonna get this all pulled out, all cleaned up, and I will show you guys the new stuff and how I plan on attacking the new system. All right, so the second half of the video, we're gonna be talking about the modifications that I made to this prepped RNC box. So you can see on the stock box, there is a hole, or there's a barb here, but it's very small inner diameter. It's like that size inner diameter, and it's way too small. So what you need to do is you need to enlarge this hole out, but you need to enlarge it so that you align your hole with the leftmost edge of the existing barb that you chop off. Because over here, if I stick my finger, there's baffling there, there's baffling there, there's baffling there, and there's baffling there. So when you drill this hole, make sure that you don't cut into this baffling over here, and make sure you don't cut into the baffling that surrounds this, because there's a chamber here, a chamber around here, and then a chamber in here. So make sure you cut that hole appropriately and keep it over to the left as much as you can. You know, there's a little bit here that can go over more, but just keep it over to the left as much as possible, so that way you don't have to worry about interference with the knock sensor. So that's all you have to do, is just enlarge that hole. Now you're probably wondering, why do I got these holes here? Well, I'm going to show you why I got those next. So the next thing we want to do is create some sort of flange adapter to 90 off this box. So what I ended up buying is this, it's called Gas Tight 08. If you Google that, you should be able to find this flange. It's 3/4 NPT threaded, and it's 2-inch center to center, I think, on the bolts. Now there's a couple different options that you can do here. Option one that I did is I got this, I cannot find 3/4 inch to 1 inch. Basically this is 1 inch ID. So I can't find 3/4 inch MPT to 1 inch ID adapter locally in brass. This is nylon. Nylon would probably work fine, but I'd rather not use plastic. Nylon has a pretty high glass transition temperature, but it's probably not as high as this. This is probably nylon with maybe some sort of glass reinforcement or something. We could probably look on there. But anyway, what I decided to do instead is basically just get this 3/4 MPT to 3/4 MPT. And I'm going to just put this in like this. And then we're going to just 90 off it like that. And 3/4 MPT is actually pretty much perfectly 1-inch OD. So it fits perfectly on something like this. And it allows us to use brass. And we really don't need a barb. There's like 1/2 pound of pressure in there. So we'll do that, and then we'll put that on, and we have these 3/8 self-tapper screws that's going to hold this down. I already drilled all the holes, and then we're going to use some sort of RTV or some sort of gunk to seal this all up. Probably not going to use JB Weld, because I think JB Weld's going to be a little bit too brittle for this. And then, yeah, we'll have that coming off that. And then we're going to have this that we're going to use to join the rest of the tube, and we're also going to drill a hole in here and tap at 1/8 MPT so that we can use our crankcase pressure sensor. So I'm going to get some of this finalized and let's get to it. So I'm going to start putting this together. I decided to go with this fitting. I always use pipe thread sealant. I never use the frickin' tape crap. I hate that stuff. This stuff is way better. Just make sure you get the yellow if you're using gas or whatever, or oil. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to screw this in. You can see we got plenty of sealant on the threads. I mean, there's no pressure in here, but like, might as well. So we'll screw that all the way down. And then once that's down, we can put some sealant on here and bolt that down and get this thing permanently mounted onto the car. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and put this box together now. I love using Permatex, the right stuff. And then I also think I'm gonna put a little bit of thread locker on these threads just to seal anything for that hole. I mean, I'm probably gonna put a little bit here and a little bit on top too, so it mostly seals up, but I don't think there should be any issues if I put a real nice amount here. So let's get this going. Hopefully I have enough left in here. There we go. So this stuff is a mess, but that's okay. I'm just gonna put a bead around the perimeter. And I think I'm also gonna go ahead and put some around the holes. Oh yeah, this is nice. Goop it up, baby, goop it up. This is one of those things, goop it up. Oh yeah. So that should fully seal the box now. And let's put that down for a second. Let's get a little bit of thread locker on some of these. Just do it on one real quick. Just gonna put a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna put a decent amount because I really don't want this to leak. And it's gonna be kind of tricky to get this first one in without making a freaking mess here. It's okay. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So we get that puppy in. Let me scrape some of this goop out of there, out of that hole. Good. Now I'm gonna get a little bit with my finger, and I'm gonna put some around here too, because I don't want it to leak out of the screw at all. I got that thread locked up. I'm gonna put that in. We're just gonna tighten this down. Just a little bit. And we'll go ahead and do the others. So this upper one, I had to cut the head down a little bit so it cleared the knock sensor. So just make note of that. If you use these flange style screws, you will need to do that. I'm gonna go ahead and put some more sealant around. And let's go ahead and put in this second one. Again, gunk it up with some thread locker so those holes don't leak. Not that I think they would, but nice. Get my fingers off, and we'll go ahead and put these other two in real quick. You can kind of already see it's starting to ooze out the side, so that's good. Again, I'm just putting a little bit on the perimeter for that bolt flange. I need paper towels. And then goop it up with some thread locker so these don't leak and so they stay in. And we're going to have a very happy, positive crankcase ventilation box, I think. And we'll do the same for the last one. Goop it up. I don't want anything leaking. Go ahead and put that puppy in. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's perfect. So now you can see it's oozing out all the way around the perimeter. So it should be fully sealed. I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry, clean some of it off, and we'll retest fit it on the car. So I'm gonna start putting the rest of the box together. In case you're wondering, this is the part number for the box. I had it when I did the little PowerPoint slide, 8692211. You also need this little rubber piece, which is 8653339. And if you have the RNC prep block, you need this big hose. It's 306-77388. For the other blocks, it's a different hose. This is a very expensive hose, but make sure you buy genuine because this will fall apart. This is just about dried. Let me go ahead and try plugging this up. Let me put my finger there. Yeah, it's holding pressure, so that's good. Yeah, it's definitely holding pressure. As long as it holds like a pound or two of pressure, that's all you need. There's never going to be huge pressure in here. Anyway, pretty happy with how that came out. I bought all new pinch clamps too. You're supposed to use the pinch clamps on these, at least here, and well, you don't need one here, but at least here and here. Off here, I'll probably just use worm clamps for now. Anyway, let's get this hose on, let's get this on, and we can start putting this in the block, or in the car. Back to working on in the vehicle. Got the box on, got that clamped down. It's close to the knock sensor, but it clears. And you can see we got a nice 90 there. It's not too tight of a bend, so it shouldn't restrict flow too much. We got this on. Obviously, I still got to do this clamp. I already did this clamp. And down here, I always like to put a little bit of RTV on the block side because this always leaks. So I'm going to try to put some RTV this time. And you can see the rubber goes block side. And that's all good. We got the box torqued down. Looks pretty good. I also have my brand new hose, which I just misplaced. Here it is. What's this? This is 8692217. And this is for if you're using an RN style intake manifold. There's actually 3 different versions of this hose. One for the 92 to 93 850s, one for the 94 plus, and then one for the S60s with the new revised box. So you can see that fits good. No problems there. So now we got this other fitting. This is just a 3/4 MPT, 3/4 MPT, and you can see I drilled and tapped for 1/8. I'm gonna put a pressure sensor in there, and then that's just gonna go in there like that, and that's gonna run over to the catch box. So this is gonna be really hard and shaky to show. I'm gonna try and do my best, but I just wanna show. So that is basically how I have my rear breather. It's just a 45 off the stock turbo drain that I tapped to 1/2 MPT, and then that basically just runs over to there, up and into the catch box. And I'm actually gonna use that for the oil to drain back to the block instead of going, some people go back to the stock box, which obviously we can't see anymore, but I'm gonna be returning to that, and I'm also gonna be using that as a vent. So this is a really hard hose to get loosened with this massive angle gear and turbo in between all of it. So I'm gonna get that loosened and then get that pulled out, and we can modify some of that. So at this point, you're on your own to go out and research the best catch can for your setup. I like the big ones that a lot of the Honda guys use with the 3 filters. Radium makes some really high quality ones, and also Nuke Performance. And then you can also decide if you want to drain back to the oil pan or not from that catch can. You either drain to the stock turbo drain if you're using that as a vent, or just drain it back to the stock box. Hope you guys enjoyed this guide, and really hope you guys find it useful.